Hello everybody and welcome back to Quarantine Kids Storytime. My name's Sascha Cooper and today I'm going to be reading a new tale from The Jungle Book by Rudyard Kipling. This is called Toomai of the Elephants and it follows a lovely young boy called Toomai who's born into a hunting community and an elephant who basically teaches him that hunting is not the right way and that freedom is possible. Now, a quick disclaimer before we get going. We at Quarantine Kids Storytime do not support hunting in any way, shape or form. This book is based on the observances that Rudyard Kipling had in his time. So, the practices that you may hear about in this story are no longer practiced, we are pleased to say. But this is how it was at the time. So if you are of a sensitive nature, I would suggest now do not watch this tale. However, if you are interested in how it was back then let's continue with the story and thank you for making it this far. Toomai of the Elephants. I will remember what I was. I am sick of rope and chain. I will remember my old strength and all my forest affairs. I will not sell my back to man for a bundle of sugar cane. I will go out to my own kind and the wood folk in their lairs. I will go out until the day, until the morning break, out to the wind's untainted kiss, the water's clean caress. I will forget my ankle ring and snap my picket stake. I will revisit my lost loves and playmates masterless. Kala Nag, which means black snake, had served the Indian government in every way that an elephant could serve it for 47 years. And as he was fully 20 years old when he was caught, that makes him nearly 70, a ripe age for an elephant. He remembered pushing with a big leather pad on his forehead, a gun stuck in deep mud, and that was before the Afghan War of 1842. And he had not then come to his full strength. His mother, Radha Piare, Radha the Darling, who had been caught in the same drive with Kala Nag, told him before his little milk tusks had dropped out, that elephants who were afraid always got hurt. Kala Nag knew that advice was good. For the first time that he saw a shell burst, he backed, screaming, into a stand of piled rifles, and the bayonets pricked him in all his softest places. So before he was 25, he gave up being afraid, and so he was the best loved and looked after elephant in the service of the government of India. He had carried tents, 1,200 pounds weight of tents on the march of Upper India. He had been hoisted into a ship at the end of a steam crane and taken for days across the water, and made to carry a mortar on his back in a strange and rocky country very far from India, and had seen the Emperor Theodore lying dead in Magdala, and had come back again in the steamer entitled, so the soldiers said, to the Abyssinian War Medal. He had seen his fellow elephants die of cold and epilepsy and starvation and sunstroke up at a place called Ali Musjid 10 years later, and afterward he had been sent down thousands of miles south to haul and pile big bulks of teak in the timberlands at Maulmain. There he had half killed an insubordinate young elephant who was shirking his fair share of work. After that, he was taken off timber hauling and employed with a few score other elephants who were trained to the business in helping to catch wild elephants among the Garo hills. Elephants are very strictly preserved by the Indian government. There is one whole department which does nothing else but hunt them and catch them and break them in, and sends them up and down the country as they are needed for work. Kala Nag stood 10 fair feet at the shoulders, and his tusks had been cut off short at 5 feet and bound round the ends to prevent them splitting, with bands of copper. But he could do more with these stumps than any untrained elephant could do with the real sharpened ones. When, after weeks and weeks of cautious driving of scattered elephants across the hills, the 40 or 50 wild monsters were driven into the last stockade, and the big drop gate, made of tree trunks lashed together, jarred down behind them, Kala Nag, at the word of command, would go into that flaring, trumpeting pandemonium, generally at night, when the flicker of the torches made it difficult to judge distances, and, picking out the biggest and wildest tusker of the mob, would hammer him and hustle him into the quiet, while the men on the backs of the other elephants roped and tied the smaller ones. There was nothing in the way of fighting that Kala Nag, the old wise black snake, did not know, for he had stood up more than once in his time to the charge of the wounded tiger, and, curling up his soft trunk to be out of harm's way, had knocked the springing brute sideways in mid-air with a quick sickle of his head that he had invented all by himself, had knocked him over, and kneeled upon him with his huge knees till the life went out with a gasp and a howl, and there was only a fluffy striped thing on the ground for Kala Nag to pull by the tail. "Yes," said Big Toomai, his driver, the son of Toomai, who had taken him to Abyssinia, and grandson of Toomai of the elephants, who had seen him caught. "There is nothing that the black snake fears except me. He has seen 3 generations of us feed him and groom him, and he will live to see 4. "He is afraid of me also," said little Toomai, standing up to his full height of 4 feet, with only one rag upon him. He was 10 years old, the eldest son of Big Toomai, and, according to custom, would take his father's place on Kala Nag's neck when he grew up, and would handle the heavy iron ankus, the elephant goad, that had been worn smooth by his father, and his grandfather, and his great-grandfather. He knew what he was talking of, for he had been born under Kala Nag's shadow, had played with the end of his trunk before he could walk, had taken him down to water as soon as he could walk, and Kala Nag would no more have dreamed of disobeying his shrill little orders than he would have dreamed of killing him on that day when Big Toomai carried the little brown baby under Kala Nag's tusks, and told him to salute his master that was to be. "Yes," said little Toomai, "he is afraid of me," and he took long strides up to Kala Nag, called him a fat old pig, and made him lift his feet one after the other. "Wah!" said little Toomai, "thou art a big elephant," and he wagged his fluffy head, quoting his father. "The government may pay for elephants, but they belong to us mahouts. When thou art old, Kala Nag, there will come some rich Rajah, and he will buy thee from the government on account of thy size and thy manners, and thou wilt have nothing to do but to carry gold earrings in thy ears, and a gold howdah on thy back, and a great red cloth covered with gold on thy sides, and walk at the head of the processions of the king. Then I shall sit on thy neck, O Kala Nag, with a silver ankus, and men will run before us with golden sticks, crying, 'Room for the king's elephant!' That will be good, Kala Nag, but not so good as this hunting in the jungles." Said Big Toomai, "Thou art a boy, and as wild as a buffalo calf. This running up and down among the hills is not the best government service. I am getting old, and I do not love wild elephants. Give me brick elephant lines, 1 stall to each elephant, and big stumps to tie them to safely, and flat, broad roads to exercise upon, instead of this come-and-go camping. Aha! The Cawnpore barracks were good. There was a bazaar close by, and only 3 hours' work a day." Little Toomai remembered the Cawnpore elephant lines, and said nothing. He very much preferred the camp life, and hated those broad flat roads with the daily grubbing for grass in the forage reserve, and the long hours when there was nothing to do except to watch Kala Nag fidgeting in his pickets. What little Toomai liked was to scramble up bridle paths that only an elephant could take. The dip into the valley below, the glimpses of the wild elephants browsing miles away, the rush of the frightened pig and peacock under Kala Nag's feet, the blinding warm rains when all the hills and valleys smoked, the beautiful misty mornings when nobody knew when they would camp that night, the steady, cautious drive of the wild elephants, and the mad rush and blaze and hullabaloo of the last night's drive, when the elephants poured into the stockade like boulders in a landslide, found that they could not get out, and flung themselves at the heavy posts, only to be driven back by yells and flaring torches and volleys of blank cartridge. Even a little boy could be of use there, and Toomai was as useful as 3 boys. He would get his torch and wave it and yell with the best. But the really good time came when the driving out began, and the keddah, that is the stockade, looked like a picture of the end of the world, and men had to make signs to one another because they could not hear themselves speak. Then little Toomai would climb up to the top of the quivering stockade posts, his sun-bleached brown hair flying loose all over his shoulders, and he looked like a goblin in the torchlight. And as soon as there was a lull, you could hear his high-pitched yells of encouragement to Kala Nag above the trumpeting and crashing and snapping of ropes and groans of the tethered elephants. "Mail, mail, Kala Nag! Go on, Black Snake! Dance do! Give him the tusk! Sumalu, Sumalu! Careful, careful! Maro, Ma! Hit him! Hit him! Mind the post! Arre, arre! Hi-yi-kaya!" he would shout, and the big fight between Kala Nag and the wild elephant would sway to and fro across the keddah, and the old elephant catchers would wipe the sweat out of their eyes and find time to nod to little Toomai, wriggling with joy on top of the posts. He did more than wriggle. One night he slid down from the post and slipped in between the elephants and threw up the loose end of a rope which had dropped to a driver who was trying to get a purchase on the leg of a kicking young calf. Calves always give more trouble than full-grown animals. Kala Nag saw him, caught him in his trunk, and handed him up to Big Toomai, who slapped him there and then, and put him back on the post. Next morning he gave him a scolding, and said, "Art not good brick elephant lines and a little tent carrying enough, that thou must needs to go elephant catching on thy own account, little worthless? Now, those foolish hunters, whose pay is less than my pay, have spoken to Peterson Sahib of the matter." Little Toomai was frightened. He did not know much of men, but Peterson Sahib was the greatest man in the world to him. He was the head of all the keddah operations, the man who caught all the elephants for the government of India, and who knew more about the ways of elephants than any living man. "What? What will happen?" said little Toomai. "Happen? The worst that can happen. Peterson Sahib is a madman, else why should he go hunting these wild devils? He may even require thee to be an elephant catcher, to sleep anywhere in these fever-filled jungles, and at last to be trampled to death in the keddah. It is well that this nonsense ends safely. Next week the catching is over, and we of the plains are sent back to our stations. Then we will march on smooth roads and forget all this hunting. But, son, I am angry that thou shouldst meddle in the business that belongs to these dirty Assamese jungle folk. Kala Nag will obey none but me, so I must go with him into the keddah. But he is only a fighting elephant, and he does not help to rope them. So I sit at my ease as befits a mahout, not a mere hunter. A mahout, I say, and a man who gets a pension at the end of his service. Is the family of Toomai of the elephants to be trodden underfoot in the dirt of the Keddah? Bad one, wicked one, worthless son! Go and wash Kala Nag and attend to his ears, and see that there are no more thorns in his feet. Or else Peterson Sahib will surely catch thee and make thee a wild hunter, a follower of elephants' foot tracks, a jungle bear. Bah! Shame! Go! Little Toomai went off without saying a word, but he told Kala Nag all his grievances while he was examining his feet. No matter, said little Toomai, turning up the fringe of Kala Nag's huge right ear. They have said my name to Peterson Sahib, and perhaps, who knows? Hey, that is a big thorn I have pulled out. The next few days was spent in getting the elephants together, in walking the newly caught wild elephants up and down between a couple of tame ones to prevent them giving too much trouble on the downward march to the plains, and in taking stock of the blankets and ropes and things that had been worn out or lost in the forest. Peterson Sahib came in on his clever she-elephant, Pudmini. He had been paying off other camps around the hills, for the season was coming to an end, and there was a native clerk sitting at a table under a tree to pay the drivers their wages. As each man was paid, he went back to his elephant and joined the line that stood ready to start. The catchers and hunters and beaters, the men of the regular Keddah who stayed in the jungle year in and year out, sat on the backs of the elephants that belonged to Peterson Sahib's permanent force, or leaned against the trees with their guns across their arms, and made fun of the drivers who were going away, and laughed when the newly caught elephants broke the line and ran about. Big Toomai went up to the clerk with little Toomai behind him, and Machara Appa, the head tracker, said in an undertone to a friend of his, There goes one piece of good elephant stuff at least. 'Tis a pity to send that young jungle cock to molt in the plains. And we'll leave that there, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Tune in tomorrow to see what happens to little Toomai next. Will Peterson Sahib make a great impression on him? And will he make a man out of him going forwards in this tale? So thank you for making it this far if you've watched today, and I hope to see you tomorrow for the continuing part in this tale. My name's been Sascha Cooper, and this has been The Jungle Book by Rudyard Kipling. Take care, everybody, and stay safe. Bye-bye.